Towson, Baltimore on this week. And, of course, the Orioles headed off to New York for a little AL East tussle. But it is football season always in this man's world and always in our world here in the offseason. As we found that last week with the Dennis Pitta injury, the Tavon Young injury. And this is the guy that has the keyboard for CBS as their senior NFL columnist at CBSSports.com. He's one of our pals down there in Florida enjoying that year-round lovely weather. We welcome Pete Prisco back onto the program. You can follow his program as well as his life and times of NFL coverage at Prisco CBS out on Twitter. What's going on, Pete? How's your off-season going?
What off-season? You know how that goes, man. It's unbelievable. It's one thing after another, and then next thing you know, it's a little break and camp is here. There is no more off-season anymore. You know that.
Well, I don't think there's any off-season when the Ravens start getting injuries like this, and they're not the only ones. All the teams are having their mandatories here coming up in the next 2 weeks. There will be more injuries. That's probably the hardest thing for any of these organizations to accept, right? When they have a healthy walking around guy in May, and he turns the wrong way on an ankle or, in the case of Dennis Pitta, a hip, and it sort of changes the trajectory of the stuff they have to do in running around and trying to replace him late in the offseason.
Yeah, and it's, bad. You hate to see guys go down, anytime, but it's really bad when they go down in these meaningless OTA practices. And I say meaningless because for a lot of the veterans, it's the same old stuff. For a lot of the young guys, they're not meaningless. But, to lose a guy like Tavon Young, I mean, that's a hit for the Ravens. I mean, it torn ACL. He was going to be one of their, three corners, and he had a good year last year. Now we know you can never have enough corners. They drafted Humphrey out of Alabama in the first round, and I questioned that pick at the time because I thought they had other more pressing needs. But in hindsight, now they're lucky they have him. So I do believe that's a big hit for the Ravens, though.
It's funny you would say that there are more pressing needs because I heard a little bit of that. But, Pete, I got on those planes back in October and November and December and flew home, and every week it was the ball going over somebody's head because they couldn't guard Odell Beckham. They couldn't guard Des Bryant. They couldn't guard Antonio Brown. And that was in the season, but somehow by the time we went to Houston together and then we went to Indianapolis for the Combine, and by the time they get to Philadelphia for the draft, it's right tackle, it's center, it's running back, it's wide receiver, it's rush edge. It was all yes, and yes. I mean, they needed all of those things. I didn't have a problem with Humphrey, but my thought was, I started to hear things about O.J. Howard being a difference maker, and when the Tavon Young injury happens on Thursday, everybody's like, well, the good thing they had Marlon Humphrey. Then on Friday, Pitta goes down, and you start to talk about the Nick Boyles and the Ben Watsons and Crockett Gilmore and Max Williams, wherever that thing is, coming back from this freaky injury. They still have all of these question marks. We're going to be talking about this until they go off to Cincinnati on September 10th. To your point, who's going to catch the football? Who's going to run the football? Who's going to block for Flacco? Until they go out and prove it, we're going to have a lot of questions about them all summer long.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about it. I mean, you talk about the pass rush. I mean, there's, Terrell Suggs is a year older. Some of those young guys got to step up and play. I mean, they got to get up there, and you got to hope that maybe Tim Williams can be a factor right away. On the offensive side of the ball, you lose Ricky Wagner. There's concerns over there. I just think when you look at them, there's a lot of questions. Perriman needs to take the next step. The running game, I think, will be okay. But it's, by no means something you look at and you go, it's a settled situation. So there are a lot of issues on that team, which is surprising when you consider who they are. Usually they allow guys to leave and they pluck one off the shelf and stick them right on in there and let them keep going. But that doesn't necessarily look to be the case this time around.
Well, you say Perryman taking the next step. I have tweeted, and probably John and Ozzy wouldn't like this, but that's okay. You read a lot of things a lot of people don't like that are true. I said, they've really staked their claim to him. They've hitched a wagon to him in the case that they haven't made the playoffs in 3 out of 4 years. I will say this, Pete. I'm around there a lot. There's no panic. Nobody's freaked out. I mean, they ripped the building apart, so the building's a little weird. And, they've literally, it's a construction zone, and they'll be in the middle of that for the next year and a half. But when you're out there, it's pretty breezy at this point, and you would never know that they haven't made the playoffs 3 out of 4 years, and maybe that's a good thing, maybe it's a bad thing. But if they're going to make the playoffs this year, if it's not Perryman, I don't know who the hell it is. I mean, I see Wallace maybe, or Watson and Wallace maybe a little bit veteran-wise, and I don't know that they know anything about the running back situation because I don't think they know their running game or what they're doing up front or whether that's going to work at this point with a bunch of players that, quite frankly, have never played together. But Perryman is the thing the fans are talking about because he's got that number one on him, and he is running around healthy right now and catching the football. And I think that they are sort of wooed into, well, maybe he is going to be a star after all. Maybe that cake just took a little longer to bake.
Well, and that happens with receivers in a lot of situations. I mean, it used to be, they burst on, but now I think it's more of a second year, and this is technically a second year. So, if they should have reason for optimism. They drafted him where they drafted him with the idea that he would become their go-to receiver, and let's face it, they need him to be. This is a team that likes to drive the ball down the field, so they need a deep threat down the field, and Wallace can run. And he did some good things, but, he's not a number one receiver, so they need a number one guy to emerge, and I think, they got to hope like heck that Perriman can be that guy.
Pete Prisco joining us here. He is Prisco CBS and senior NFL columnist out at CBSSports.com. He's also doing the Roughing the Passer podcast out on iTunes, and you can obviously find him at Prisco CBS out on Twitter the best way. They've loaded up on defense, right? They really think the defense is going to be better this year. And to your point, all of these guys they've drafted, the Carl Davises, the Matt Judons, the Kamalea Correas, in addition to the four guys they've added in this year's draft, these are going to be the guys that are on the field. There's no cavalry here other than the draft picks they had and the guys that have come up through the cracks.
Yeah, and I mean, you look, Wormley's got some talent. They drafted him. Bowser's got some talent. Tim Williams, if he can stay on the straight and narrow, has a lot of talent. They got, like you mentioned, I think Brandon Williams is darn good inside. I think they got a heck of a player last year when they get Judon stepped in and did some good things. I think he has some potential. I don't know if he's going to be a star, but he did some good things last year. So there are guys. Mosley's a good player. The secondary, the back end is going to be really good with Weddle and Jefferson, and they need Smith to get back to playing at a high level. I don't know what Carr can give them, maybe a year. I mean, then you put Humphrey in there, and you hope like heck that Tavon Young can go back next year. There are still pieces there, but there are a lot of concerns.
Joe Flacco, is he a concern for you, or do you feel like you know who he is? Is he good enough for you these days?
Well, I think he's good enough if he has help. I mean, I don't think Joe's one of those guys that's going to carry a team and just be the guy. I mean, we've seen him in the playoffs. He gets going in the postseason, he can light it up. But he also has to have people around him. He also has to have help from that defense. And when, you're scrambling around, you have a great running game. I mean, there's not a dominant number one running back. That's still always a concern. Then I think it puts more pressure on him. And now you look at the front of that offensive line. I mean, who's going to be the right tackle? Is Hurst going to be the right tackle? I mean, is that how they're going to play it? Are they going to play Hurst at right tackle? That to me is concerning moving forward.
Pete Prisco joining us here, Prisco CBS. All right, so other than the Patriots, and let's write them off because they were the best team at the end of last year, and I think any of us would be hard-pressed or a little foolish to say they're still not the best team. Give me some teams you think have made some real strides here. I mean, I hear a lot about the Buccaneers this offseason as sort of that team that folks have sort of said, well, maybe they'll win 10, 11, or 12 games this year.
Well, I was down there a couple of weeks ago, and I spent time down there, and I do think the addition of Deshaun Jackson is really going to help the offense. I mean, they doubled Mike Evans so much in talking to their coaches and their players. I mean, it was something that happened on a regular basis, and they didn't have a lot opposite him. So they get Deshaun Jackson. If you double Mike Evans, you're going to pay for that in a single on the other side. And then they add O.J. Howard. I think it's going to be a nice threat in the middle of the field. So I think offensively they should be really good. I mean, there's some concerns at the running back position, but they're going to throw the ball around and run off of that. Defensively, Mike Smith has done a heck of a job with that defense. And they, got some improvement there. I think one guy, they signed Chris Baker, I think is really going to help them in free agency, playing next to Gerald McCoy from the Washington Redskins. And then I think Noah Spence is going to have his bust-out year. I think this is a guy who's going to go from, maybe, I think he had 5 sacks last year, 4.5, whatever, and he's going to go to about 12 to 15 this year. He's that good. So if they can get that play from him, Hargraves upgrades, the Evans, the rookie they drafted out of A&M, will start at safety, I think, down the road. I think they're going to be much better on defense, and if they're better on defense, they're going to score points. Remember, they went into Atlanta in opening week last year and beat them on the road and just missed out in the postseason.
Any thoughts on the Atlanta reclamation project? I know they've been talking for the past 5 months or so that, amnesia and all that stuff. They certainly were a really good football team last year.
Yeah, and I was there last week, and I'm going back up there next week for something I'm doing on Matt Ryan. But there's no hangover there. And I think they're the best team in the division. Again, it's going to be a better division, but I think they're the best team in the division. Might be the best team in the NFC this year because, last year they did it on offense and defense took a long time to get going because they started 4 rookies. Well, those 4 rookies are now a year older and a year better. They played in the postseason without Trufant, who's their best corner. That allowed guys like Jalen Collins to grow up, and Poole, the nickel corner, to grow up. They add Tack McKinley. They add Dontari Poe in the middle of the defense. He's playing on a 1-year deal, so he's going to be really hungry to get more. So I think from a defensive standpoint, that's where the growth is going to come. They'll be good on offense again. Steve Sarkisian, who I think is going to be just as good as Kyle Shanahan running the offense, as the new coordinator. I think they'll be really good on offense, and I think they're going to be much, much better on defense.
Pete, part of this offseason thing, and you cover the National Football League, especially the way you do it, is doing these special offseason things. I know you got a big top 100 coming out this week. Talk a little bit about that and how much painstaking craft, you put as much into that as the craft beer I drank out in Denver.
I do. And it's something I've done for a while. It started as a top 50 a long time ago. In fact, I think I was one of the first guys to put those lists together. And then it kind of evolved into the top 100. And I always now like to get it out before the NFL Network unveils theirs, even though theirs is way off base. Mine is more one of those lists of going into 2017. For example, a guy like Joey Bosa might not be where he's on in the NFL Network's list. I don't even think he was on it, whereas on my list, he's going to be higher than a lot of people expect because I think he's going to be a star. I think you saw that early last year, and you're going to see more and more of that. So I kind of project a little bit when I do it, and also, based on play last year, you got to take into account, like J.J. Watt and Rob Gronkowski are coming off injuries, but when they're on the field, they're dominant players. Both are expected back, so you got to put them in the top 10 of your list. So it's kind of a little looking back and a lot looking forward.
Who's the Ravens' best player? The kicker?
Yeah, and he's in the top 100. No, Weddle's the best player.
Weddle's the Ravens' best player. Okay, all right. Where do you have him, or are you going to not preview that?
I mean, you could make the case the kicker's the best player, but I'm not putting a kicker on the top 100.
Fair
Just
enough.
not. I wouldn't.
Well,
not,
it speaks volumes to why we haven't made the playoffs 3 out of 4 years when our kicker's our best player. I mean, I
think Weddle's their best player. I think if I had to rank their best players in order, tell me if you would agree, I'd rank Weddle 1.
Brandon Williams? No?
Yonda 2.
Oh, okay, sure.
Maybe Yonda 1, Weddle 2. I forget how I had them, but they're in there. Then probably Brandon Williams. And then...
Well, you can't say Jimmy Smith because he's never healthy, right? I mean, healthy
right.
enough
when
to...
he's healthy, he's a darn good player.
Yeah.
But he's not... and Suggs is not the same player.
C.J. Mosley. Yeah.
Mosley. There's your 5, probably.
And Ronnie Stanley better be getting on that list at some point for the way they drafted him. I mean, a small sample size right now, and we're not. I mean, look, the Ogden comparison is going to be there for him, forever. But if he can just be quiet, not Michael Orr. How about that?
Right. You want a spinning top over there. I mean, look. When we just went through that roster, and it was hard to find the top 5 players. That's not a good thing. We forgot to mention Tony Jefferson had a great year last year. Had a phenomenal year for Arizona last year.
Yeah, we talk about the guys they've lost. They did pick up a really good football player.
Right, and if they can get that kind of play out of him again, then and he's a great story because he's a self-made player, but if they can get that play out of him and Weddle, I think the back end's going to be fine.
Love having you on, Pete. Enjoy your summer, what's left of it, and, dude, turn your phone off at some point. I mean, tell me you're going to, Italy and drink wine or sit on the beach.
Aruba. I always go to Aruba. I'm going again in a couple weeks.
All right, that's a arid, windy thing. It's close to Venezuela. Watch out, all right? Be careful.
Yeah, I know. You got it.
Great to have you on, Pete. Pete Prisco, one of our great friends and a good dude to contribute here on a hot summer day. He is Prisco CBS out on Twitter, as well as a senior NFL columnist for CBSSports.com out of the fighting city of Jacksonville, where they play golf and lay on the beach, and I always give Pete a hard time about that. I'll get off his lawn, and you can go rough the passer at his podcast on iTunes as well. He is Prisco CBS on Twitter. You can find me out in the Bayou Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We are crystal clear from anywhere, even in Jacksonville, Ponte Vedra, wherever you are. You can find us even across the state line, up in Georgia. I'm going to Charleston, South Carolina later this summer, so I'm getting down to that part of the world. Get down to a beach down there. They tell me it's beautiful. The guys in Hootie and the Blowfish tell me that. So I'm going to go see a little rock and roll and eat good food in Charleston. But I get to Jacksonville every couple of years. We're skipping Jacksonville. We got London. The trip's on sale right now at WNST.net under the Road Trips tab as well. You can always find me on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, and streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore Sports.